Okay, welcome back to the 144,000 project. This is video 15 on You Are Gods and our website and YouTube channel. The YouTube is Rev9 Video. Now if we go back, scroll down, I was talking about where we're at. If you go down to the free Bible charts and load these down, here's where we're at. We just read Revelation MP Summary 2. This is the second part of Revelation where I basically put it in paragraph format. When we get to the end of that, then I go into the two witnesses, and just before the two witnesses, blessed are those who follow God's law. Alright, and you'll see 12 times in the Revelation it talks about those who are blessed are those who follow God's commandments, and of course that's commandment 2. You'll have mercy. Those that follow His law will have mercy. Okay? Blessed are the reader and hearers of the prophecies, such Revelation 1:3, and we just went over that. Now in 12:17, the remnant of the seed, which is the seed of Sarah, she's the one that had the prophecy of the 12 stars, which keep the commandments of God, cling to the evidence of Christ. So those are of the 12 tribes who cling to the evidence of Christ. There's consolation for the holy, that's 14:12. And again, those are 12 tribes, starts right up in 14. Those are the 12 tribes, 144,000. Those who keep the commandments of God and the faith of Christ. So those who follow the law, and that comes from verse 4. Now, in the next verse, blessed are the dead which die in the Lord. Well, still, they're dead, but they'll be resurrected, so they're blessed. They're God's. Blessed is the watcher who clings to his clothing. Same concept. Invited to the marriage supper of the Lamb. So if you're invited, you're blessed because you're remarried back to God through Christ. And now you're part of the group of the gods who will be the royal priesthood. Blessed and holy is participate in the first resurrection. Well, if you read what it says, some have their heads cut off, but He sews them back on. Resurrects them in the first resurrection. But these are ones of the 144,000 or others who make it through this end time. Some of them make it through, some of them are teaching the message of Christ and have their heads cut off. But they're brought back in the first resurrection, so that's a good thing. So there's two resurrections. White throne judgment will be the second, where people are judged, and those that are deemed worthy for the marriage supper, I guess. It's hard to say the way it's laid out, which is which, but you're going to ask them when you see them. Blessed is the keeper of the statements of the prophecy of this book. Yeah, okay. Those that follow the law, teach it properly, teach the prophecies properly. 22:7, 22:14. Blessed are those which do His commandments. In other words, follow God's law. So right here in Revelation, 12 times. Oh, and I missed the 2:26, those who obey His laws, who keep His word, who are zealous for His word. So 2:26, 3:8, and 3:19. Okay. And that is on this chart here, and here's the bottom part where we want to look at this part here. So, when you scroll down, the next part is the two witnesses. Some of this we just went over. There's your Jeremiah 31. 32, 33, I don't know if I had 20, I think I put 23 on here somewhere. Alright, Ezekiel 37, Hosea, we went through all that. And then when you scroll down, you get the rest of it. This is kind of what it looks like if you're looking at it in a browser, in other words. So I looked at some of this. Actually, I didn't really put Luke 22:30 in there, but I should. So I'll go back and I'll add that. I'll add all the stuff that's on here. Our 12 tribes constantly pray, and we looked at that in Acts. We were just there. There's some other things here that God is the God of Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, of course. Hebrews 8:8, 10:16. We just did that. James. Oh, and I didn't really mention Peter started out to the chosen, strangers scattered abroad. Same concept as James 1:1. And then we did the royal priesthood. Okay, then we get down to kindred. Alright. Now, I wonder if I can over here and do it this way. Alright, there you go. Kindreds of the earth shall wail and lament. Alright, now just go up and down. So there you go. Kindreds of the earth shall wail and lament over Christ. So that's your kingdom priests that will be wailing and lamenting. 13 tribes, but it's pared down to 12 in Revelation chapter 7. And that cross-references back to Matthew 24:30. All the tribes of the earth shall mourn when they see Christ. And you'll also see that in Daniel 7:14, Zechariah 12:10. So there are your cross-references. And of course, we've already been to Daniel chapter 7, and it's talking about the two witnesses, which we've already shown are the 12 tribes. Same thing as Zechariah, 12 tribes. So the tribes in Matthew 24 obviously are the 12 tribes. It's not, doesn't just change context all of a sudden when you get to Revelation. Revelation, and I guess, you know, I should just go ahead and put Exodus, whatever, 19:6 on here as a cross-reference as well, since it's already got Dan and Zechariah, but everybody should have known that because it was already on the other chart. So when you get to 5:9, you were sacrificed and have redeemed by your blood from every kindred, speaking of Christ, made them into kingdom priests, and they will reign over earth. Of course, the people that will reign are the gods that he made of the 12 tribes. You are gods, and those are the ones that will reign. They'll judge others of the 12 tribes, and so on and so forth. And here are your other cross references: 2:26, which you just saw above, 19:15:26. Oh, okay, here you go. Kingdom priests, Exodus 19:6, and here's from the kingdom priests throughout Scripture, and then we've already hit those, and we just hit this one, 1 Peter. Okay, so that's the context of 5:9. It's not about just anybody and everybody. The different languages are those of the Anglo-Saxon people who speak different languages. So those are, you know, all these white Anglo-Saxon countries that were colonized by white Anglo-Saxons and taught Christ originally, and some still do, but it's waning. So once the salt loses its flavor, then all they can do is tread it underfoot. So that's what's getting ready to happen. Salt's going to be tread underfoot. That's the whole concept of Revelation. Great multitude from every kindred standing before the throne in white robes. That's 7:9 of Revelation. Okay, and that's from 7:13. Those in 6:11 in Revelation are those who've already been killed for teaching the Word of God. They're waiting for Judgment Day for their killers to be punished. They're under the throne, told to wait until their brothers are killed. So the brothers are not just others living over in whatever nation, you know. No, they're brothers, they're brethren, they're kindred. It's kindreds, right? Okay. All right. And that's 9 through 11. I said 11. These are Christians and their brothers of the 12 tribes sealed in 7:4 through 8 of Revelation, 144,000 Christian Israelites. That's the context. So 6:9 through 11 is a preview of what's going to come later on in Revelation. So they're under the throne, they're already died, but their brothers are getting ready to be killed, which is what it mentioned in 20, the first resurrection. 26, those that are going to be resurrected are those that had their heads cut off, right? Okay. So it's all about this end time context. 11:9, and they of the people and kindreds and tongues and nations. It's his people of the 12 or 13 kindred tribes speaking different languages because they live in various Anglo-Saxon Christian Israelite nations. Only Christians who understand Revelation, these prophecies, would be expecting these armies to come back to life as prophesied. And I said that could be the fulfillment of the dry bones. It only makes sense. It fulfills the prophecy. Revelation 11:9, right? And then they're brought, they're taken up to heaven, and that's when they wail and lament, and they see Christ calling these dry bones, all these soldiers that were just killed, hit by nukes and otherwise. However, they have dry bones. It could be a laser weapon, it could be any kind of weapon, but they're destroyed. But then Christ calls them up to heaven. That's what they witnessed. That's the dry bones prophecy. That's the way I teach it anyway. Just fits. 12:17, woman clothed with the sun, moon on her feet, head of the crown of 12 stars. Now we're getting ready to get back to that in Genesis. It's a prophecy. It's Sarah who was given the prophecy. The astronomical date is September 23rd, 2017, and the second part on the dragon, I didn't write on here, ... was December 13th, 2017. So that would be the starting point of what we're getting ready to see when the salt is going to be cast out and trodden underfoot, which is this prophecy of his people who have just not done what he told them to do. He would have worked with you, but instead you just went to church and listened to pastors lie to you, and you didn't study it for yourself. And frankly, we just haven't had a lot of good people connect the dots. So I'm just trying to connect the dots so you can see all these prophecies and how they connect together, and we probably haven't had that done in a good format on video and all that. So that's my point of putting it on video. So the dragon, or Satan, was furious with Sarah, proceeded to wage war with the rest of her offspring. So what he did is he brought in this flood of people, which is what's going on right now. The whole Europe's being flooded. They call them refugees, but you look at the videos and pictures and you can see they're fighting age men, Muslims, who, why would you bring a Muslim into a Christian country? Obviously they're dead enemies, have been, because Muslims have killed Christians, and Christians have fought for survival for hundreds and hundreds of years. So, fought among themselves, besides fighting Muslims and everybody else. So why would you bring them in their country? Well, if the heads of your country are bringing them in, the heads of your country are run by Satan. They're getting ready to destroy your country. In fact, your country already is destroyed because you haven't done anything to it. You say, well, we still got to follow whatever laws are passed, right? We can't do anything about it ourselves. Yep, so you're going to be killed. That's it. It's judgment. The remnant not killed in the war, the remnant, in other words, is those not killed in the war on the two witnesses, 144,000. There'll be others, Christians who follow God's law, have the testimony or the witness of Christ, are the 12 tribes. Of course, the remnant in chapter 14 are the 12 tribes. It starts right out that way from chapter 7, so it's all about the 12 tribes. 13:7, it was given to them, which is that dragon gave authority to the beast, which is a military coalition government. That's what a beast is. It's an empire that destroys other nations and empires, and that's what happens at the end. You'll have this one dominating empire. So the dragon, that was 13:2, I think, where it says the dragon, Satan, from chapter 12, gives authority to the beast, this military empire, to make war with the saints. So it's the saints. In other words, the saints have to be here. If the saints flew away, then how would you make war with the saints? Saints are the ones, like it says, who are Christian, follow God's law, and teach Christ. So the saints have to be here. You couldn't have the war. Yes, it's all these people going to church today who are going to be killed, and only the best of the best are going to be saved. Some are going to be resurrected. That's the context. And then you'll have the white throne judgment based on what you knew. So if you learned His Word, you need to take this and spread it to as many as you can. That's your job. Alright. 12 tribes from 11:7 then. 2 empires who witnessed for Christ. And then they were defeated. And then the power over all kindreds, tongues, and nations is 13:7, is this 2 witnesses, or these 2 empires being defeated. So they'll be defeated by their own government. That's what it's going to boil down to. That's what I was getting to the other day in Daniel, and I've already taught that. A lot of logic there. It's kind of hard to lay out. Remnant was expecting the dry bones, the 144,000 others. Yeah, only the remnant would have been expecting to see these armies being pulled up to heaven by Christ, called up to heaven. Now, the remnant would expect it because they would have already read this and understood it. Not a whole lot in that group. 14:6, I saw Christ standing on Mount Zion with the 144,000 Christians from the 12 tribes who had His name, right? Christ, right? And His Father's name which would be Elohim, I guess, or the El of Elohim would be the creator, if you want to look at it that way. Yahweh's really was used, I am, really was applying to Christ, the prophet that Moses spoke about. So Yahweh really is Christ, not, it would be El of Elohim, which would be the creator God. At any rate, they'll have a name written on their forehead, being the first fruits redeemed. So the first ones redeemed then are the 144,000. Now, there were first fruits also redeemed when Christ came the first time. These are the first fruits redeemed when Christ comes the second time. That's how I would look at it. Redeemed from among men who follow Christ without fault before the throne of God. Okay, which was verse 12. 14:12. Having their everlasting reward preached to them by an angel to every nation. So the angel was the 7 angels over the, in other words, the 7 churches. So an angel, in other words, was given these nations, kindreds, tongues, and people where the 144,000 reside. These Anglo-Saxon nations then are being told this information to him by an angel, same concept of Paul being taught by Christ. So it's Christ, the angel, that's going to teach these 144,000 in these next few months. We're only 3 years out at best. So at some point you can expect this message to reach all the people, and just a small amount of them accept it because the rest of them are been brainwashed going to church. Same way you watch TV, you're brainwashed by TV, you think the stuff on TV is real, not realizing that it's Hollywood. The news is all produced from Hollywood. It's all Hollywood. It's entertainment. The channels are registered, not as news channels. There's no requirement for any of these entertainment channels to say anything truthful. That was a Supreme Court decision not that long ago. Alright, those 144,000 follow God's law to the end. They have to reject the mark of the beast. So they have to have a sanctuary set up for them to live. Or, Christ is taking care of them. It actually says in Isaiah, he'll send an angel to give them food and water daily and so on. If you read Isaiah. The victors over the beast, so they understand these prophecies. And they're also called conquerors or overcomers, and are invited to the marriage supper of the Lamb in Revelation. And then in 19:9 you have, it's a summer martyred, okay, and that's in 17:6, 14:13, 24, but are brought back in the first resurrection, governed with Christ over the heathen with an iron rod. It mentions that 3 times in 2:27, 19:15, and 26, governing with an iron rod. So there are these gods, or part of them at that point, who will be set up for, and I just read it the way it says it. It gives you a 1,000-year period, and then Gog and Magog. Some say, well, okay, I haven't stayed that close enough to decide if that's the right order and context. Even though things are written in a certain order, it doesn't mean they have to be that way. So Gog and Magog could probably be part of all these prophecies about these heathen that are attacking with 2 witnesses and all that. That could be true. I just haven't looked into it. However, here's your concepts in Revelation. 12 tribes, or 12 gates, 12 pearls, 12 tribes, 12 angels, 12 apostles. All these are mentioned in Revelation 21 and 2 and so forth. 12 foundation courses, 12 precious stones, 12 crops. And the crops I've already mentioned are the posterity of the 12 tribes. Then you have 24 elders on 24 thrones, which are the heads of the 12 tribes, plus the 12 apostles. Who thinks it's not about the 12 tribes? Alright, so just download these charts and print them out on 18 by 20 is the best way. All these look where you can read them. Of course, you can read them online if you don't have a way to print them. The PDFs obviously just be printed on regular paper. So I got 4 right now, and there'll be more. The JPEGs are the images, and you can just go right to a printer. Any of these quick copy places can just download all this stuff right off the web really fast. did it the other day, and the guy just went through and just tagged all his stuff, clicked, downloaded it all, and within, took my money. By the time I got everything paid, all of this was already printed out. He's got 2 huge printers. Printed, punched the holes in the paper for me, and collated everything. It was just amazing. Printed multiple copies, and it just, you know, what do you call it, where it sticks one way, one the other, laid it all out, punched holes. It can put, you know, staples through it. It can do all that stuff. So, the time I paid for it, it was already done. It was just amazing how fast they can do it. Alright, so, now, is there anything we left out? Well, 22, 11, and 14, I think we got that off the chart. So, there you go. So, what's the next thing then? 37:9. Well, let's go to Genesis 37:9. See what we got. Alright, so we just covered 35:11. We got a little genealogy stuck in there. Just looking back, 35:11. Okay, 12 sons of Jacob. Alright, then we have the names of the 12 sons of Jacob. History of Esau. Okay. We have the history of Esau, and then their genealogy stuck in here. Esau was the father of the people of Edom. So that's how 36 ends. Then we got 37. Now, 37, Joseph reported the bad conduct of his brothers to their father, Jacob. So it says, then Israel, or Jacob, also loved Joseph more than all his children, because he was the son of his old age, so he made him a robe with long sleeves. Also, he was the son of Rachel, and Rachel was who he first vowed to work for 7 years to marry Rachel, and then ended up with Leah, and we know how all that worked out. And then Rachel had children last, and the prophecies then were really he intended to go to Rachel, I guess, in a sense. So now there's more to it, but at any rate, get down to 6. Listen to the dream that I dreamed. We were binding sheaves in the middle of a field when my sheaf arose, stood up, and your sheaves turned and bowed to my sheaf. But they replied to their brother, reigning, would you reign, and ruling, would you rule over us? Okay, well, they understood the concept of the vision, that the vision was about Joseph ruling over his brothers. Okay, so they understood the vision right off the bat. Then you get to the second one. Verse 9, then he dreamed another dream, and related to his brothers, and said, I have dreamed another dream when the sun, the moon, and 11 stars came, and paid honor to me, in other words. He told it to his father and to his brothers. And his father reproved him, saying, what is this dream? Shall I and your mother and your brothers come and bow down to the ground to you? Yes, that is what we're going to see later on. So the first dream came about when they went to Egypt. Of course, we know the story between here and how they ended up coming to Egypt, and Joseph was the second in command. They intended to kill him, and then ended up selling him into slavery. And then, of course, he was in, he wasn't doing that bad. Then he got put in prison in Egypt, and then came out because he understood prophecy, and he was the only one. And the king found out about it and said, okay, well, obviously you speak to God, because not only did you tell me the prophecy, you told me the fulfillment of it. And everybody agreed that it sounded good. So he becomes second in command. So, and then he said later on that what his brothers had intended for harm, God meant for good. And I'll remember that. So he didn't necessarily hold it against him when he realized that it actually turned into an extreme blessing for himself, And then he recognized that, of course, these prophecies or these visions came from God and all that, so Joseph didn't hold against him. In fact, he was more blessed than the others. And Joseph, I think, felt that way as well. So, Jacob. And Jacob, as it says, was this dream, Shaw, I and your mother. So Jacob understood, I and your mother was the sun and the moon. Okay, and the 12 stars, of course, were your brothers. Well, so he understood. So there's a symbology of what we have. And start in Revelation chapter 12. There's a symbology of it right there. Crown of 12 stars. Oh, and I need to find that. I can look that up. Crown. There's another mention of the 12 stars or the 12 tribes being a crown. In fact, I think we already mentioned it. It was in Isaiah. I'm pretty sure that we already went through that verse and I mentioned that crown. But I need to come back over here and put that verse in here. Maybe it was up in like, chapter 53 or later. I know it's up there somewhere about the 12 tribes being a crown. So, same symbologies there in Isaiah as well. Now, my mention is Psalms 148:3, which is right at the end of Psalms. So let's look and see what that says. Starts out, give thanks to the life, thanks to the Lord. From the heavens they thank him on high. And that's a cross-reference to Mark 11:10, Psalms 118:25, which of course is about the 12 tribes. And all his messengers thank, all his army thank him. The sun and moon thank. Well, there you go. The bright stars all thank. Okay. The skies thank his name. And the seas, the skies cover, they thank the Lord's name. Seas of people, in other words. For his order created and placed them forever, he gave them an unchanging decree. So, the unchanging decree was that the 12 tribes would be administrators of God's law in the end time. That was the covenant. They'd be redeemed forever, and then they would administer God's law under Christ with an iron rod over all the heathen nations of the earth. And all the nations of the earth will follow his law, and they'll be the ones that will see to it. And that's the whole concept of the Bible right there. Sums it up. Whirlwinds obey his word. Glory above sky. He lifts up the horn, or the king of his race. That's 14. Praise him for all his mercies to Israel's sons, the race which he chose. Okay, was that context then? Just anybody and everybody? Of course not. He chose Israel's sons, the 12 tribes. Give praise to the life. That's how it sums up. 48. Then when you get to 49, starts right out again. The meeting of the saints, let Israel rejoice. Okay, so the saints, again, are the Israel, sons of Zion, be glad in their king. Starts right out, 149, exact same context. With a double-edged sword in their hand to execute justice on nations. Verse 6. Okay, Lord has delight in his race. Verse 3. So, same context. And peoples to make a reform, and fetters to fasten their kings, in iron made chains, and to do on them whatever the sentence decreed. To his saints this honor belongs. So, verse 9, the honor of taking out justice on the people who came to destroy them, they're given that right. See, that's the concept of unalienable rights, because God backs it up. He says, you're going to do it, you're in this position, and he's going to back it up and make it happen. So you'll have angels fighting for you if necessary, or whatever. But it's the 12 tribes that are going to be running things under Christ, all 12 tribes at the end time. That's the context of the whole Bible. Okay. So, that's Psalms, of course, Hebrews 8:8, we've already been there about the new covenant. And then Revelation 12:1. There's a symbology of the crown of 12 stars. So that's Sarah. She's the one that had the prophecy of the future kings, and that coming from her. No one else had that prophecy. It can't be Rachel. It can't be Mary. She's the one that was going to birth all of these nations, which we know as the nations of the 12 tribes. And it's just the ones who follow God's law and teach the message of Christ, which would have been the Melchizedek or the King of Righteousness or whatever terminology they used in Genesis, speaking about the Son of God. Some places it's about the Son, so it just depends. But if you go back and read it in the New Testament and look at the cross references, it says Christ. So they knew something, whatever the term was that they used. In the New Testament, when it talks about the events in Genesis, it talks about Christ. So how do we, how do we reconcile that? I don't know. We don't have Christ back there. We just have the King of Righteousness, Prince of Peace. We have the shield. We have the stone. So we don't know what they use, even though the New Testament, when it talks about stuff in Genesis, it talks about Christ. So we only know what terms we have. So I just use those terms. The shield when it's the shield, the angel when it's the angel, the King of Righteousness when we can figure it out who's talking, a king in other words, or a prince. Alright, so twice redeemed, great Christian nation, commonwealth, who are remnant true believers are rescued from in the end time fulfilling the 2 sticks prophecy, which we already went over in Ezekiel 35:10, 37:16 about the 12 tribes. Stick snatched from the fire in Isaiah 43. Yeah, that's a good one, because the 12 tribes are being destroyed and they just, oh, we gotta follow whatever the government tells us to do, even though it's killing us. We just gotta do what they say, because that's the law. They'll just be destroyed, I guess. Saying, oh, we gotta follow what the government says. They're the ones in control. Yeah, sure. They'll destroy you, alright. And you'll agree to it. 43, but now says the life who created you, Jacob and Israel, who formed you, fear not. So, formed in the womb is something that's mentioned many times. It's also in 43:7, formed. The people I formed for myself is in 43:21. The people I formed for myself, Jacob, Israel again, 22. Formed in the womb, 44:2. And then it just goes on and on and on all through here. 44, formed for my friendship, that's 44:21. 44:23, Jacob, redeem, Israel, he redeems. Thus says the Lord, I redeemed you, formed you from the womb. Just look up the word womb, but I won't get all of them. And they have prophecies, only applying to them in 44:7. So, if you just look through all this stuff, you should have all these connections in your Bible so you can just see the context as you're reading through. 43, 1 and 2, stick snatched from the fire. I'll redeem you, call by my name, I am with you when crossing the sea. Shall walk in the fire unscorched. Okay, fear not, because I am with you. Verse 5, I'll bring you up your race. In other words, the 12 tribes from the east, west, north, and south. So, there you go. Bring the sons from afar, my daughters from the ends of the earth. All who are called by my name, Christians, by my power I created, formed in the womb. Okay. Wow. You witness for me. Verse 10. Those are the witnesses. The chosen servants I picked out or chosen. For they knew and they trusted to me and perceived that only I exist, that no God before me was formed. After me none will have life. That's verse 10. Okay. Well, I think we know who those people are. They're not over in the Middle East. People who believe in Christ, teach the message, are over here in this great Christian nation and this commonwealth, white Anglo-Saxon nations. They haven't been over there in 2,000 years. They left and never went back. Alright, well you can read all that. Of course they're going to be judged in 44. Now listen, Jacob, my friend, Israel, whom I delight, or I chose, and your helper, who formed from the womb, it's Luke 44:49. Have no fear, Jacob, my friend, and of course his offspring, which he just said. The righteous in whom I delight, it's verse 3. I breathe out my wind on your seed, my blessings over your crops. Okay, well, you can talk about crops, or sometimes those are people. You just have to read if it's talking about their offspring or actual food, and there's both. Then you get down to foretelling future things in verse 7. I missed the, and then in 21, Jacob, Israel my friend, I formed you for my friendship, forget me not, Israel, return, redeemed. I mean, come on, it's all Israel, Jacob, 12 tribes, so on. No one else included here. Now, I said the stick snatched from the fire in Isaiah 43:1, but it's not in 43:1. Oh, lit the fire around, they burnt. Oh, okay, sorry. So just before 43. Stick snatched from the fire was from the end of 42. So just go back and look at 42. So 42:24, Jacob, who gave Jacob to robbers, to the plunderers, Israel? Did not the Lord give them both? Yes. So here's where the salt's cast out. He says you're worthless. Your churches are worthless. We already said he was going to show it in Zechariah. He's going to get rid of the preachers because they're worthless. They're not teaching anything that's correct. They're worthless. And then the people that are following all that don't go out and learn this themselves, so they're worthless. I mean, they do all these things, but not in Christ's eyes. Lost your flavor. So, and but this isn't really the one about the stick snatched from the fire. However, here's you are gods again. If you back up to 41:23, tell the events of the future and show you are gods. For some reason, I don't have that one. And that quotes over to 42:9. Past events have arrived, now the future I tell before its arrival to you. Others I will never give to my powers. Again, 12 tribes, the only power of prophecy, the only people he worked for are these 12 tribes, these Israel people. But then of those, only the ones who call on him, follow his law to the best of their ability, who witness for him. That's what the text all through Isaiah is all about. Alright, 2:6 prophecy, Ezekiel 36. Did we read 36? Yeah, I guess we already went through, we went through 36 yesterday in the last video. Amos 4:11. Let's look at that. Amos. Alright, 4:11. Is not your disease from the direction of Egypt? I slew your soldiers by the sword. With the loss of your Hebrews, I started in 10. I brought the stink of your camps to your nose, but you have not turned to me. I have overwhelmed among you, as when God overwhelmed Sodom and Gomorrah. So God judged Sodom and Gomorrah, and you became like a stick snatched from a fire. Okay, well there's the stick snatched from the fire. But, yeah, same context. So Isaiah 40, end of 42, refers to Amos, and the sticks are from Ezekiel. Same concept. No, there's your, symbology fitting together there, in other words. So, here you're being destroyed, but you still haven't turned back to Christ. Consequently, I'll do this to you, revolting Israel. So, those that revolt, those that, don't want anything to do with Christ, they're part of Israel, in other words, they're going to be judged. And the ones that are in the same country are going to be judged right along with them because they're just not being salt anymore. They're just going to church, showing up, go home, go do things, and they're not really salt. It's not that they don't do a lot of good things, but they're not salt in his eyes, not what he wants them to be. Prepare to meet your God, right? Be sure that the former of the hills, the creator of the wind, the reporter to the man of he decides, he uses the wings of darkness, walks in the heights. His name is the Lord of hosts. Well, there you go. So, and then you get the remnant of 10% right there in chapter 5. Just read that. The city that brought out 1,000, 100 are left. So, 10%. Where 100 came out, 10 are left to the house of Israel. So, it's the house of Israel being judged, 10% as a remnant left. There's a concept right there. Zechariah 3:2, I think we already saw that. Maybe not. Maybe we didn't look at 3:2. What was 3:2? Oh, okay. Yeah, I think I did, but not recently. So starting in 3, in Zechariah, afterwards saw Joshua standing before the messenger of the ever-living, but Satan stood at his right hand to accuse him. So, if Satan stands at the right hand of God, then the messenger is Christ, right? The noble, however, said to Satan, so it's the noble then would be the messenger, okay? The ever-living reprove you, Satan. So, could be another angel, but most likely it's Christ. Yes, the ever-living who has chosen Jerusalem reprove you. So that's speaking about Christ. Is he not a stick snatched from out of the fire? Well, there you go. I missed that. So, there's your stick again, applying to the Israel people. Alright, Romans chapter 8 and 11:15. The end result of the conquerors are those in Revelation 14 that we can wrap this. So let's continue on here. Romans chapter 8. Okay, Romans. Alright, so I'll just say chapter 8. So, for the law of the Spirit of the life in Christ, its first 2, has freed me from the law of sin and death, because the inability of the law, which was weakened by the physical nature, God has sent His own Son in the likeness of a sinful body, in other words, a human body, on account of sin, condemned the sin, so that the decree of the law might be accomplished by us who conduct ourselves not in harmony within sensuality, but in harmony with spirituality. So, sensuality is just the human, but if you are spiritually, then you're looking for this Redeemer, which was started with promise, the faith, the hope of Abraham. So those are in harmony with sensuality, meditate about the gratification, but those are in harmony with the Spirit. What pertains to the Spirit is what they're looking for. For the desire, sensuality brings death. Desire of the Spirit, life and peace, the Prince of Peace, right? Because the desire of sensuality is hatred of God, can't be obedient to God's law, it cannot please God. However, you are not sensual, but spiritual. Okay, well, who's he talking to? Well, you would have to back up to get to the context. You can always find the context. You might have to go back or forward. But of course, the law, who was the law given to? Well, the law was not given to the world. It was only given to the 12 tribes. And if you just back up, you might have to keep backing up. You can see it's clearly context is about the 12 tribes being given the law. If you just start out in Romans, Paul, a special apostle, appointed by Christ, right? Which he had formerly announced in the sacred writings of his prophets respecting his son Christ, physically born from the line of David. Well, okay, but that's about the 12 tribes, isn't it? Because all the things in the prophets are about the 12 tribes, and Christ coming from the 12 tribes. The prophet was from Deuteronomy 18:15, and then this hope and faith all came from Abraham back in Genesis. So that's only applies to the 12 tribes, doesn't apply to the world, whom we received a charge and commission to subdue all nations to faith. Well, this charge and commissions to subdue all nations to faith was to subdue their brethren, their kindred nations, who were under prophecy, the house of Israel, who were under prophecy to be brought back through Christ, which is why Christ died, so he could remarry, which is the wedding feast of the Lamb, to remarry the house of Israel who was divorced. That's why he had to die. He raised 3 people from the dead when he was alive. He didn't need to die to do that. He had to die to remarry the divorced house of Israel, which is why he sent them to the divorced house of Israel. And they were to believe on his name. That's who those believers are from the last 2,000 years, which we have the historical record of. The ones who rejected, not that long ago, went back and took over the land so they could claim that, oh, we're these people, except the people here are the ones that believe on him, not the ones that reject him. So you can take all the people you want and stick them over in Jerusalem. If they reject Christ, what good is it? The ones that rejected, taken out of the book of life. So what's the benefit? Why should we pay any attention to people taken out of the book of lives? Pay any attention as far as the Bible goes just because they claim that they're Israel? We'd have to, first of all, we'd have to prove that point. But it doesn't matter, because if you're Israel and you believe in Christ and you follow His law, those are the only ones He chooses. So if you don't do all those things, it doesn't do you any good to say you're Israel. Okay? So the nations of Israel be subdued to faith in His name. The ones that aren't subdued to faith in His name are cast off. So like again, there's no point in paying any attention to this nation of Israel today, because Christ is just going to, He's not even going to deal with them at all. Maybe, who knows? They're of no effect. You're being destroyed because you're not following His law, and you're the ones teaching it, and you're not following it. That's why you're being destroyed. Wow. All of whom you are included by Christ. That's 7. All the holy chosen friends of God in Rome. So these are in Rome. These are part of the 12 tribes in Rome. Of course, that's where they were. Alright. He's sent to evangelize those who are in Rome. That's 15. Alright, well, I know this is, the words are globalized here from the choices, but it's about the context. It's about 12 tribes and who Christ told the apostles to go to. That's the context. Didn't change context just because it got down here at Rome and they decided to choose other words. Alright, so we'll go back to chapter 8. Well, we've already been in chapter 8 because these, well, maybe we weren't. So let's just go back. Alright, so those who have the Spirit, for as many are led by a divine Spirit, they are the sons of God, verse 14. So there you go. You are God's. Those are the ones that have the Spirit, teach Christ, follow the law. Okay? Thus the Spirit witnesses to our own spirit that we are chosen. So the Spirit then would be Christ, witnesses to our own spirit that we are children of God. Then, so if Christ speaks to your spirit, then you're part of these children, the gods. And He will do things for you. Just remind Him of the promises and the covenants, right? But if children, then heirs, heirs certainly of God, and co-heirs with Christ. Yeah, you're co-heir. He inherits you, you inherit Him. Okay. If we suffer together, we'll be redeemed together, and then rectification. The longing desire of the creation, verse 19, expects the revealing of the sons of God. Yes, you are God's. Is expecting to be revealed, and they will be revealed at the wedding feast. Of course, you can figure that the people who are following His law and teaching Christ and even have their head cut off, those are probably sons of God being killed. Okay, liberty of the sons of God, verse 21. Okay, there's your sons right there in Romans. However, when you get over here, verse 29, He predestinated them, right? Set apart for His purposes. Those are the chosen people of the 12 tribes. He predestinated them, appointed them to conformity with the image of His Son. So the Spirit, so Son, in other words, gives them His Spirit. They teach Christ, and they do a lot of good things. Up to this point, I don't know, they've done pretty good. They created a country, and it was Christian to begin with. So He might be the firstborn among many brothers, but whom He predestinated, He called. Okay, so very simple. He only predestinated one group of people. He didn't predestinate the world and anybody that believes on Christ. He predestinated the family, those of the family who would continue with the Spirit and desired the Spirit. So it's just those that desire it. If you don't have any desire for it, you can revolt from that Spirit and go on and do whatever you want. You can opt out. Whom He called, those He made righteous. This is verse 30. Made righteous and distinguished. So if you've been distinguished as God's chosen, in verse 33, okay, then I think we know who you are. Then all these we more than conquer, verse 37, so that's the idea of the conquerors or overcomers in Revelation. And then that leads you into chapter 9. And in chapter 9, he's speaking about who? My kindred by race who are Israelites. That's verse 9 verse 3. Chapter 9, verse 3. Talks about they're given the promises. The ones from Isaac. Okay, 12 tribes. All come at that time. And then they, of course, have prophecies that apply to them. May show you my government. That's verse 17. My authority be proclaimed. So, the ones that stick with Christ, who rule with an iron rod, will have the authority through Christ to execute justice, a righteous justice system. That's exactly what it says. Just read through it. 11:15, and then we'll get out of here. Well, when you get over here, 11, for I speak to the Gentiles, because I myself am an apostle of the Gentiles, right? Yeah, no, he's apostle of the house of Israel, where he was sent to. I magnify my service that I may excite my kindred, although yours might say heathen. I don't know, I'd have to look at King James if it says heathen or Gentiles or what that says in 13 and 14. At any rate, so they're trying to insert these words, which I already showed you. It goes to Hosea 1:10 and all these other verses, which are actually about the 12 tribes, but it's trying to confuse you. So it globalizes the words. In other words, it's trying to excite his kindred, save some from among the kindred. That's what it's talking about. So some from among the house of Israel who were divorced, he's trying to bring them back and let them, look, you know, you're still part of this covenant if you'll accept Christ. He died for you. That's the whole point. For if their dispersion reunites a world, what will their reunion be but life from death? Well, there you go. So who was dispersed? House of Israel. Cast off. Divorced. Put away in punishment. Those are the terms used. Alright, so then it talks about the wild olive and all that. But the end result then are these conquerors in Revelation chapter 14, who are obviously 12 tribes, overcomers, so forth. And they're part of the wedding feast, and the ones who stick with the message, and that's what you should understand. You were predestinated, but unfortunately a lot of them just will reject all this and say, oh, my pastor has a degree and he knows what he's teaching. He couldn't possibly be wrong about anything. Okay, so we'll come back with the next video, 37:27. Oh yeah, and do they talk about Zerah Judah? Everybody talks about Pharaoh's Judah, which Christ was come. They even mention there's a whole other line of Zerah Judah right there at the beginning of Matthew 1:3. Zerah Judah. Well, what about Zerah Judah? That's a whole seed line of Judah, which would be Jews according to the way they teach it. Of course, the house of Judah, or tribe of Judah. It's really a tribe of Pharaoh and Zerah would both be separate tribes of Judah. No one talks about Zerah Judah. Where Zerah Judah is? Gee, where are they? Well, they left way back from Egypt. Okay, so we'll come back and talk with that. Thanks for watching.